Good morning, folks. I'm Dan. Another one of my little internet basics. I think this is about number 7, and it's kind of just what's going on in the world of building here as I see it, or things I've run across that I found are kind of interesting or important. And today I want to talk about a couple of things. One of them was coatings for on our aircraft. And I was just going to lightly touch on something I saw the other day concerning whether to use epoxy coatings or powder coating. And I thought I'd just briefly touch on that. So I want to do that, and then I want to talk a little bit about things that stall out our projects again. And I've kind of covered this before, but things keep cropping up that I think kind of add to the confusion. Anybody that's watched me for very long, I hope I've given the impression that I'm not telling you how you have to do things, because I think about the time anybody's telling you that this is the only way to do things and this is what you want to do and you have to do it this way to have a good, safe aircraft. I think that's crap. And if I ever come across that way, that's probably when you need to not watch my videos anymore, because that's not my intent at all. And the other one is that I think I want to try and convey the idea that anybody can build an airplane if you set your mind to it. It doesn't have to be tremendously expensive as far as tooling, and a lot of the things we do can be done relatively inexpensively. When we look at the big picture of stuff, some of the tooling that we can build and the way we can accomplish some tasks are not that expensive. There's alternatives to do them out there, and that's kind of what I want to convey. My dirty little shop here, I've got a fair amount of tooling and equipment that I've acquired over the years, whether I purchased it, whether I built it. So I've got what I consider to be a relatively complete shop. I think I've kind of got an advantage there that maybe some people don't have. I don't have enough space, don't have enough room to be building, so I've got limitations too. But a lot of the things can be accomplished with minimal equipment or really inexpensive equipment, and you can get the job done. So anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to touch on today. So if you're interested in that, why hang around and hopefully I'll give you something that's worth watching. We look at all these conversations that come up on these lists that say you have to do something this way. And I think that's wrong. You know, as I said before, I think there's several different ways of doing things. My intent is just to give you some ideas about how I do things, and hopefully it'll inspire you to come up with your own processes or techniques to do things, and a lot of them are going to be better than mine. But anyway, I see a lot of stuff on lists saying you got to do stuff this way. It's by individuals. And what I notice is you don't see Zenith chiming in, and it's the same way on most of the other lists. The owners of that list, or the owners of the aircraft that you're building, in this case Zenith, they're not chiming into all the internet sewage that goes on some of these lists. And it's because they've already figured out their processes, they know what works, and they've already basically provided you with the ideas or the direction in which you need to go to complete your aircraft. So a lot of times you've got very experienced people on these lists that already are flying aircraft, multiple aircraft, been doing this for years and everything, and they'll come on and they'll say, you've got to do it this way. Well, Zenith's not chiming in and saying yay or nay to any of that, because in reality they know it doesn't matter, is my opinion. So a lot of times we see this stuff going on the lists that don't matter. And one of them is the epoxy aerosol coatings, of which there's several out there. They're, listed by different manufacturers. Here in the U.S., Eastwood is one of them that supplies those products. And they're basically an aerosol can that you either pop a little cartridge in the bottom of them, or when they're shaken away, it breaks that cartridge and it mixes the two parts. So you have a two-part epoxy product, whether it's primer, whether it's top coat, whatever the case may be, is my understanding of those. And then you've got powder coating, and you'll come across the guys that say, oh, you've got to use this or you've got to use that. And I think there's no solid answer to that. So I don't give you any answers, basically. I give you things to think about. Greg from Greg Stoll 750 accused me of being philosophical here the other day. And thanks, Greg, that you think that I'm that deep. But I don't really consider it being philosophical. I consider it being more of a realist. So I do a lot of powder coating in my shop. You've seen some videos of me doing that. If you haven't, I'll put a card up here showing some of my powder coat stuff, or my powder coat process, which is just a small powder coat operation. I don't have a commercial powder coat gun or anything. I've got a little East dual voltage gun, and my oven's a little bit bigger than some people are going to have, because I used it in my gun business. So it's my Cerakote oven that works perfectly well for powder coating. So I can do some larger things than you'll be able to do in a standard oven or a toaster oven type of thing. But nonetheless, neither one of those products is the only answer to you know, there's not one that's any better than the other because it all comes down to preparation. And with powder coating, if you don't have the capabilities to do your own powder coating in-house, you're having to send it out, obviously, and you've lost control of that process. So I've seen a lot of stuff that's been powder coated by some of the, you know, from fairly reputable powder coat companies, both in person and on the internet. You'll see a lot of videos of that, where a lot of it's been machine tools that I've watched. People have had parts powder coated and that type of thing. And sometimes you really get a good job and sometimes you don't. And it all comes down to the preparation of it. So if you're sending that stuff out, you've lost control over that. I tend to lean towards a lot of powder coating stuff myself because I have control of that process from start to finish. You know, I do my own sandblasting. I make sure I don't have any contaminants when I do it. I prep the material properly, and I can go and powder coat it, and I know that I'm not going to have any problems with that. Several years ago over at Arlington, why there was in the one of the Piper Cub forums, why we got into quite the discussion, because that's when powder coating was just starting to become popular, and several Cub fuselages had been powder coated, and most of those had seen service in Alaska, but after, you know, a period of time, why they discovered that there was corrosion underneath that powder coating, and it had created enough problem that it wasn't just it was a major repair then, you know, where the Cubs will rust out, you know, in the back into the fuselage where they gather moisture. Why it was quite a problem with us, and the process was new enough. I don't know who'd done the powder coating on them. It was one series of fuselages that had been done, or a few of them, and, you know, from the same powder coater. And I think it was probably mainly due to poor preparation, because if you've got good preparation, everything's clean and sealed properly and everything, the powder's going to do what it's supposed to do and give you a good seal there. So it's a great option for a finish if you've got control of that finish. The spray on epoxy coatings out of an aerosol can, preparation is going to be just as important, but for some people it's going to be easier if they don't have a compressor or powder coat facilities, sandblaster and everything. It's going to be easier for them to get a good finish with that aerosol can. You know, it's gonna work well for them. So there's no right or wrong answer to those. It's just whatever works best for your process and your tooling and equipment. So kind of leave it at that. I've kind of rambled a little bit. Hopefully that's helped you a little bit. The other thing is what I consider internet sewage, and it's the crap that goes on there that everybody is doing that makes your build or makes their individual build a whole lot more complicated and a whole more drug out. What it's been now is guys are drawing stuff in CAD, and then with the intent, I guess, of having them CNC'd out on either their own CNC router, or I don't know if they're going to send them out. I don't know what the intention is. I don't see any advantage to laying out parts in CAD. We've got coordinate systems to draw out the wing ribs and whatever is a formed part from Zenith. And in reality, it's just as fast to do that. We're only building one airplane. A CAD and CAM is a production item, basically. A CAD's fun to play with. I play with it a lot here in the shop on both my CNC mill and the lathe. And I deal with CAD and CAM there as I learn it. I'm still a newbie to it, so I still make lots of mistakes along the way. But for building a one-off aircraft, which is all we're building, there's no time savings. There's no real advantage. I suppose if you just want to draw it out in CAD, and if you've got either have a CNC router or access to a CNC router, why, then maybe it makes sense if you want to do that. But in reality, you can make just as consistent parts, just as good, without a lot of the programming hassles by setting up router templates and routing out your parts that way. You'll find that's just as quick and easy to do it that way as to try and go the CAD-CAM route. Zenith runs everything in CAD-CAM, which is another thing guys are saying, well, they found these errors in Zenith's plans. Well, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, and there may very well, we know there's discrepancies in some of Zenith's plans. So that's all well and fine, but it's nothing that is that big an issue because we're only building one airplane. Zenith's got the programming figured out. They build their kits now on CNC routers, and they match hole drill them and all that, but they're producing kits. You know, we're building a one-off aircraft. Why do we need to to have all that information stored in CAD and CAM when we've got all the information in the set of plans that we've already paid for. So to me, that's basically a waste of time, and it'll slow down your building process by doing that. Lay out your drafting volume and lay out the coordinates, draw it out, and you're going to be perfectly happy with everything you've got in the end. Your parts can be made just as easily and just as accurately setting up router templates and routing them out, and you're going to have less money involved. It's going to be easier and faster, and you're going to get your project completed quicker. So that's just my opinion. You know, a lot of people are going to disagree with that. Leave me your comments below and tell me why I'm full of crap. And in my mind, the main objective is to build an airplane. So anything that we're doing, and I'm bad for it. I've, you know, strayed off on building bending brakes and, you know, building tooling for this and that and something else, and I'm guilty of that. The idea is to build an airplane. So spend your time towards that, you know, towards that goal, and you'll be farther ahead and hopefully have a flying airplane. I've got some videos coming out where I started laying out wing ribs. I've got a nose rib that I've laid out, and I'm going to do a series of videos taking that from beginning to end on how I produced mine, and you know, hopefully that'll give you some more ideas. But I don't see all of this straying from what we're doing, how that really helps us. So anyway, hopefully that'll give you some ideas. Hopefully you've tolerated my rambling long enough, and hopefully, Greg, I haven't been too philosophical for you. So anyway, thanks for taking the time to watch.